And now in the studio by Justice Minister Michael Masutha to talk a little bit more about this. A very good evening to you, Minister, and thank you so much for speaking to us. I think the questions which we faced during the briefing and generally which people have is why now, given the fact that some of these allegations are as old as 2009?
Well, there's an expression that it takes a thief to catch a thief, and I think the revelations at the Zondo Commission give testimony to the credibility of that expression, because I think it's out of the revelations that many of us were able to see more than met the eye.
But even at the briefing itself, you said the SIU let you down because they did not give just cause by illustrating how the department has been put out of pocket. But so that says to me that there were serious allegations before of which you were aware of. So not necessarily the testimony of a thief that would propel you to look deeper into the matter.
Well, maybe let's get to that. Yes, there is a 2009 report of the SIU which made certain recommendations, which included that disciplinary action be taken against certain officials at the time. That could not be implemented to its logical conclusion because they since resigned. There was a recommendation that the contract be terminated. The contract was for 2004 to 2003 that was in question in the report, and had actually lapsed in 2007. So that had effectively run its course. There was a recommendation that civil recovery, where appropriate, should be pursued by the department. Now, where appropriate has a specific meaning, in that you, in civil proceedings, have to prove that you suffered out-of-pocket loss as a result of non-compliance with a contractual arrangement, or maybe establish that due to fraudulent action you were, you were dealt unfairly. Now, one would have expected that investigation to, in some detail, establish in what manner there was non-performance on the part of the service provider, or poor performance, or that the department was shortchanged in terms of value for money.
Allow me to cut in and ask, and I know some of these things precede you, why, when you realized that this detail or this important aspect was missing, did you then not go back to the SIU and say, because these are serious allegations, this is a serious matter, this is what we'd require to deal with this inferred corruption?
Well, in respect to that aspect, I kept asking the question to the department at every other opportunity. Is there justification in the first place for outsourcing? And if so, how come we have so many more kitchens that we're running on our own? And I kept on getting this assertion. And we'll go back to the reports and look at whether we were not deliberately misled.
Are you now implying that because of the testimony before the Zondo Commission, you had a better understanding of some of the collusion and corruption that was said to be going on inside the department, allegedly, including with Bosasa?
Oh, certainly. But you must understand that when it comes to these matters, probing deeper requires a particular competence. Now, the one aspect that I pursued since I took office was the recommendations relating to criminal prosecution out of that report. You notice from my response in 2015 to Parliament already that I indicated that upon inquiring from the NPA at the time, I was advised that they had gone so far as to substitute the prosecutor who was dealing with the matter, and that the DPCI on its part had also appointed a new investigator to look into this so that they can have a fresh look at the criminal aspect, and that some outcome that year would be forthcoming.
I'm just trying to understand what was so special about the test. Is it the detail in it, about what came out of the Zondo Commission that brought you to a point where you say, we need to convene a meeting, we need to employ an audit company, we need to meet with affected officials? What was it?
I'll take you back to the expression I quoted earlier. It takes a thief to catch a thief. Because on the face of it, you see, when people plot a scheme, they make sure that they cover all their bases. So on the face of it, the contract looked legitimate. The value for money seemed to be what was exchanged. And it was not obvious that the state was taken for a ride just based on a, I would say prima facie examination.
So which thieves have been unmasked now? And I ask this because there are very strong allegations that have been made within the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, and one of them which would include your number 2, the Deputy Minister of Corrections.
Well, let me first indicate that to the extent that there are allegations of wrongdoing against any officials or any person, that matter falls perfectly within the domain of law enforcement agencies. And to that extent, you would have noticed that certain arrests had been made, certain investigations are ongoing. I referred you back, before you interrupted me, to the 2015 situation where I sought to inquire from the National Prosecuting Authority as to what action had been taken. I have since pursued this matter with the National Prosecuting Authority, including with the acting national director immediately before the current appointment of the new NDPP, who at the time had said to me that the reason they never pursued the criminal aspect was because they needed, the DPCI needed to commission a forensic audit which was prohibitively costly for them to pursue, which still I found unsatisfactory. And thus, even in relation to the current head, I reiterated this to say that I believe that the NPA did not do enough to pursue this matter.
Okay, so let's come back to this issue. You say you've met with affected accounting officers in the portfolio of Justice and Corrections, and the question is, whom did you meet with, and does that include your Deputy Minister of Corrections, Thabang Makwetla?
Mr. Thabang Makwetla is my deputy and is part of the ministry, so he has to be part of all the processes that relate to correctional services, and he was therefore part of the discussions that we had yesterday in preparation of the briefing today. And that includes the heads of the SIU, of the Department of Justice, Correctional Services, who else? I think those were the main affected entities.
The question is, should he be there, given the fact that the impression has been created, given the allegations, that he himself is involved or implicated? Should he not be placed on special leave, or should he not withdraw himself from these proceedings?
All ministers and deputy ministers are appointees of the President and continue to serve at the behest of the President. I have no authority over any of my deputies.
So he released a statement saying that he is willing to present himself to be probed, including by the Public Protector. Has he requested the Public Protector to investigate any dealings he's had with Bosasa or any relationships that may implicate him or at least vindicate the testimony by Agrizi?
That's a perfect question to ask Mr. Makwetla himself. I have no role in it.
As his political principal, as the Minister of Justice and Corrections? I
am not the political principal of my deputies. The political principal of all ministers and deputy ministers is the President.
So what is the next step then for the department to clear itself, to rid itself of this perception?
Well, you yourself have indicated that Mr. Makwetla has indicated his readiness to testify before the commission, before the public protector, as you put it, and obviously, I suppose, should any of the law enforcement agencies wish to engage him, he would be willing to cooperate.
But I'm also referring to the department as a whole.
Well, as far as the officials are concerned, 6 officials are either contemplated or placed on suspension on the correction side, and in relation to justice, the 2 officials who are in the security section of the department have equally been served with notice of suspension.
Thank you very much for your time, Justice Minister Michael Masutha. And let's take